I never thought my own family would stage an intervention to disown me, declaring it was for the good of the family. But they had no idea about the secret business I'd been building, one that would make them eat every cruel word they'd ever said to me. My name is Patricia Johnson, and for 35 years, I've been the family disappointment. While my brother James graduated law school and my parents built their medical and corporate empires, I was the one who couldn't get her act together. At least, that's what they told everyone at Sunday dinners. The irony? I was sitting on a $2.8 million empire they knew nothing about. It all started 3 weeks ago when I walked into what I thought was a casual family dinner. The dining room felt unusually formal. Mom had set out the good china and Dad wore his serious CEO face. Even James was there, which was weird since he usually spent Sundays with his perfect wife and their perfect kids. "Patricia, sweetheart, sit down," Mom said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she used when delivering bad news to patients. "We need to talk." I should have seen the signs. The way Dad kept checking his phone, how James avoided eye contact. The stack of papers on the side table that Mom kept glancing at nervously. "We're worried about you," Dad began, his businessman tone in full effect. "You're 35, living in that tiny apartment with no stable career path. It's time for some tough love." My stomach dropped. Here we go again. "Michael built his first company by 30, Mom added, referring to Dad like he wasn't sitting right there. "James made partner at his firm before 35. Even our neighbors' kids are buying houses, starting families." I wanted to scream. They had no idea I'd been quietly building an e-commerce empire from my laptop, that my tiny apartment was a strategic choice to avoid suspicion, that I could buy their house 3 times over if I wanted to. "We've been supporting you for too long," James finally spoke up, his lawyer voice grating against my nerves. "The family money, the connections Dad's given you for job interviews, even this weekly dinner tradition, it's enabling your dependence." The word dependence hit like a slap. If only they knew I hadn't touched their money in 2 years, that every dollar in my personal account came from my own work. "So what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. Dad pulled out a manila folder. 30 days, Patricia. You have 30 days to show us a concrete plan for independence, or we're cutting you off completely. No more family support, no more safety net." "It's not punishment," Mom rushed to add, though her eyes said otherwise. "It's motivation. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom to find their strength." Rock bottom. I was already at the top of my own mountain, and they couldn't even see it. The dinner continued in painful silence. They passed around their usual updates: James's latest case, Dad's company expansion, Mom's hospital promotion. I sat there, cutting my steak into tiny pieces, thinking about the spreadsheet hidden on my laptop that showed last month's revenue. $340,000. But this was my choice. I'd kept the business secret for good reason. My family had a way of taking over everything I touched, turning my achievements into their achievements, my decisions into their guidance opportunities. This business was mine, purely mine, and I wasn't ready to hand them another thing to control. After dinner, James walked me to my car. "Look, Patty," he said, using the childhood nickname that now felt condescending. "This isn't personal. We just want you to succeed." "Right," I muttered, fumbling for my keys. "I'm serious. Remember when you wanted to start that photography business in college? Mom and Dad were ready to invest, but you gave up after 2 months. Or the graphic design thing? You had talent, but you never followed through." His words stung because they held a grain of truth. I had given up on those ventures, but only because every time I showed promise, the family would swoop in with their opinions, their connections, their ways of helping that somehow always ended with me feeling smaller. "This time will be different," he continued. "Sink or swim, you know. Sometimes that's what people need." I nodded and got in my car, not trusting myself to speak. As I drove away, I saw them through the dining room window, 3 heads bent together, probably already discussing my situation and planning their next intervention strategy. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. The business dashboard glowed with green numbers: daily sales, profit margins, international shipping orders. My e-commerce store specialized in sustainable home goods, and I'd built it from nothing over 3 years of 18-hour days and relentless optimization. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. While they saw failure, I was crushing every business metric that mattered. My customer satisfaction rating was 4.9 stars. My profit margins were industry-leading. I had distribution deals across 4 countries and a team of 12 remote employees who thought I was brilliant. But in that dining room, surrounded by their degrees and their expectations, I felt like a fraud. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of family check-ins that felt more like interrogations. Mom would call asking about job applications. Dad sent me links to entry-level positions at companies where he had connections. James texted motivational quotes about taking responsibility for your life. Each interaction felt like a paper cut, small but accumulating into something that really hurt. I started avoiding their calls, which only made things worse. The messages became more frequent, more urgent. "We're trying to help you" became "we're concerned about your attitude," which evolved into "maybe we've been too soft." Meanwhile, my business was exploding. A lifestyle blogger with 2 million followers discovered my products and featured them in a sustainability series. Orders poured in faster than I could process them. I had to hire 3 new customer service reps and upgrade my warehouse space. But I couldn't tell anyone. In my family's narrative, I was still the struggling daughter who needed their guidance to survive. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I was working late, processing orders and planning my expansion into European markets, when my phone rang. Mom's contact photo filled the screen, her smiling face from last Christmas when she'd introduced me to everyone as her artistic daughter who's still finding her way. "Patricia, honey, we need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow night? The whole family will be there." My blood ran cold. "The whole family?" "Your Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert are in town, and James is bringing Sarah and the kids. We thought it would be nice to have everyone together for a family meeting." A family meeting with the extended family. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This was going to be a public execution. "Mom, I don't think—" "7 o'clock, sweetheart. We've already told everyone you're coming." She hung up before I could protest. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of dread that felt familiar from childhood. The same feeling I'd get before parent-teacher conferences where they'd discuss my potential and lack of focus. The same knot in my stomach before family gatherings where relatives would ask what I was doing with my life while James got praised for his latest accomplishments. But this time was different. This time, they were planning something bigger. I arrived at the family house at exactly 7 o'clock, my hands shaking as I rang the doorbell. The Johnson family home was everything mine wasn't: sprawling, elegant, a testament to generational success. The circular driveway held 4 cars: Dad's BMW, Mom's Mercedes, James's Tesla, and Uncle Robert's Lexus. Dad opened the door, wearing his most serious expression. "Patricia, come in. Everyone's waiting in the living room." The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. Mom and Dad sat on the main couch. James and his wife Sarah flanked them on either side. Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert occupied the love seat, and my 2 teenage cousins perched on dining room chairs that had been brought in for the occasion. The only empty seat was a single chair facing the group. "Sit down, honey," Mom said, gesturing to the isolated chair. I sat, feeling like I was about to be sentenced. Dad cleared his throat and pulled out a folder, thicker than the one from 3 weeks ago. "Patricia, we've called this family meeting because we're all concerned about your future. It's been 3 weeks since we gave you an ultimatum, and frankly, we haven't seen any progress." "We love you," Aunt Susan jumped in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But love sometimes means making hard choices." Uncle Robert nodded gravely. "Your parents have been more than generous, but at some point, enabling becomes harmful." I looked around the room at these people who claimed to love me. My teenage cousins looked uncomfortable but curious, like they were watching a reality show. Sarah kept checking her phone. James stared at a point just over my head. "So what exactly are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. Dad stood up, his CEO presence filling the room. We're saying that effective immediately. We're cutting all financial support. No more family assistance, no more backup plans, no more safety nets. But more than that, Mom added, her doctor voice clinical and detached. We're also removing you from family events, family business discussions, and family financial planning until you demonstrate real independence and responsibility. The room fell silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. You're disowning me, I said quietly. We're motivating you, James corrected. This is what people call tough love. We've watched you drift for too long, Aunt Susan said. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom to find their strength. Rock bottom. There was that phrase again. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Patricia, you're 35 years old. Most people your age have careers, families, mortgages. You're living like you're 25, and frankly, it's embarrassing for the family. Embarrassing for the family. Those words hung in the air like smoke. I looked around at their faces, some sad, some stern, all convinced they were doing the right thing. They had no idea they were talking to someone who'd made more money in the past year than most of them made in 5. Do you have anything to say? Dad asked. I could have told them everything right then. I could have pulled out my phone and shown them my business dashboard, my bank statements, my customer testimonials. I could have watched their faces change from pity to shock to embarrassment. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the clinical way they delivered their verdict. Maybe it was seeing my teenage cousins watch my humiliation like entertainment. Maybe it was finally understanding that their love had always been conditional on my fitting their definition of success. No, I said simply. I don't have anything to say. Mom's face crumpled a little. Honey, this is for the good of the family. We're not doing this to hurt you. We're doing this because we believe in you. But her words felt hollow. If they believed in me, they would have asked about my life instead of assuming they knew everything about it. They would have noticed that I'd stopped asking for money, stopped leaning on their connections, stopped being the dependent daughter they thought they were saving. I stood up slowly. Can I go now? Patricia, James started, but I was already walking toward the door. We'll be here when you're ready to take responsibility, Dad called after me. I didn't turn around. As I drove away from the house where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to measure my worth by their approval, I felt something shift inside me, sighed. The hurt was there, deep and raw, but underneath it was something else, rage. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about independence, but they'd actually given me something far more valuable, the final push I needed to stop hiding who I really was. I drove straight to my apartment and sat down at my laptop. The business dashboard loaded, showing the day's numbers. $18,000 in sales, orders from 12 countries, customer reviews calling my products life-changing and exactly what I was looking for. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. They wanted to see independence. They wanted to see responsibility. They wanted to see success. They had no idea what was coming. The first night after my family's intervention, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at numbers that would have made my father's corporate salary look like pocket change. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt hollow. For 3 years, I'd built this empire in secret, telling myself I was protecting it from their interference. But sitting there in the dark, I realized I'd been protecting myself from something much worse, the possibility that even my success wouldn't be enough for them. Now I knew. It wouldn't matter if I owned Amazon. In their eyes, I would always be the disappointing daughter who needed saving. That realization hit me like a physical blow. I'd spent 35 years trying to earn their approval, and they'd just shown me it was never going to happen. The anger that had been simmering since I left their house suddenly boiled over. I grabbed my phone and started typing furiously, searching for everything I could find about family estrangement, about children who cut contact with toxic parents, about the psychology of conditional love. Article after article confirmed what I was feeling, that my family's behavior wasn't love. It was control dressed up as concern. One article particularly struck me. When Love Becomes Leverage, Understanding Emotional Manipulation in Families. It described exactly what I'd experienced: the constant criticism disguised as help, the way they'd made their love contingent on my conforming to their expectations, the public humiliation designed to force compliance. By sunrise, I wasn't the same person who'd walked out of that living room. The hurt was still there, but it was wrapped in something harder: determination. I spent the next week researching everything I could about my family's pattern of behavior. I read about narcissistic family systems, about scapegoating, about golden children and black sheep. I learned terms like gaslighting and triangulation that perfectly described decades of family interactions I'd always thought were normal. Most importantly, I started documenting everything. I went through my phone and saved every text where they'd criticized my choices, every voicemail where they'd questioned my abilities, every email where they'd offered help that came with strings attached. I had 3 years' worth of evidence showing a pattern of emotional manipulation that I'd never recognized before. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed a strategy. I called my business mentor, Sarah Chen, a woman who'd built a $100 million company from nothing and who'd been quietly advising me for the past year. We'd connected through an online entrepreneurship forum, and she was one of the few people who knew the true scope of my business. "Patricia," she said when I explained the situation, "I've been waiting for this call. I've watched you hide your success for 3 years, and frankly, it's been painful to watch." "They never would have understood," I said. "Maybe not. But you've been living like an abuse victim instead of a successful CEO. It's time to step into who you really are." Sarah helped me craft a plan that was surgical in its precision. I wouldn't reveal my success out of spite. I'd reveal it strategically, in a way that protected my business and my future, while making it impossible for my family to continue their narrative about my failure. The first step was legal protection. I hired a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but the best business attorney in the city. Maria Rodriguez had a reputation for protecting entrepreneurs from family interference, and she understood exactly what I needed. "Family money can become family leverage," she explained during our first meeting. "We need to ensure your business assets are completely protected from any potential family claims, and we need to document their recent behavior in case they try to interfere with your business relationships." Maria helped me restructure my business entities to add additional layers of protection. She also had me start recording all family interactions, which was legal in our state as long as one party consented. The second step was strategic networking. I'd been so focused on keeping my business secret that I'd avoided the local entrepreneur scene entirely. But if I was going to go public with my success, I needed allies in place first. I joined the city's Women Entrepreneurs Association and started attending Chamber of Commerce events. Within 2 weeks, I'd connected with 12 other successful business owners, including 3 who dealt with family rejection of their success. "It's more common than you think," explained Jennifer Walsh, who owned a chain of fitness studios. "Some families can't handle it when the failure child becomes the most successful one. It threatens their entire worldview." The third step was the hardest. I had to stop hiding from myself. For 3 years, I'd been living like I was ashamed of my success, keeping my personal life small and unremarkable to avoid drawing attention. But if I was going to claim my real identity, I needed to start living like the successful woman I actually was. I started apartment hunting, looking for something that reflected my actual financial position instead of the image I'd been maintaining. I found a stunning 2-bedroom loft in the trendy part of downtown, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a home office space that could showcase my business properly. More importantly, I started therapy. Dr. Amanda Foster specialized in family trauma and business success, and she helped me understand why I'd been hiding my achievements. "You learned early that your family's love was conditional," she explained during our third session. "Success that they didn't control threatened that conditional love, so you kept it hidden to protect the relationship." "But Patricia, a relationship that requires you to diminish yourself isn't love. It's control." As the weeks passed, my anger transformed into something more powerful: clarity. I wasn't angry at my family anymore. I was disappointed. I'd spent decades trying to win a game where the rules kept changing, where success was always just out of reach because the goalposts moved every time I got close. But I was done playing their game. It was time to play by my own rules. The transformation began with small changes. I started dressing like the CEO I was instead of hiding behind thrift store clothes. I upgraded my phone, my car, my entire presentation to the world. I wasn't being flashy. I was being authentic. The business continued exploding during this period. The lifestyle blogger feature had created a surge that sustained itself through word-of-mouth marketing. I had to hire 6 new employees and lease additional warehouse space. My monthly revenue hit $420,000 in October, and I started getting inquiries from investors interested in scaling the business internationally. But the most important change was internal. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped minimizing my achievements in conversations. When people asked what I did for work, I said, "I own a sustainable home goods company that does multi-million-dollar revenue," instead of mumbling something about working online. The response was fascinating. People treated me completely differently when I presented myself as successful. Business opportunities appeared out of nowhere. Social invitations increased. Even strangers seemed more interested in my opinions. It was like I'd been living underwater for 3 years and finally came up for air. The moment I'd been preparing for came in early November. I was at a Chamber of Commerce networking event when I spotted my brother James across the room. He was there with several partners from his law firm, working the room with his usual confident smile. Our eyes met, and I watched his expression shift from surprise to confusion. I was standing with 3 other successful business owners, clearly comfortable and confident in a way he'd never seen before. He made his way over, his lawyer smile firmly in place. "Patty, what are you doing here?" "Networking," I said simply. "James, I'd like you to meet Maria Rodriguez, Jennifer Walsh, and David Chin. This is my brother James. He's a partner at Morrison & Associates." The group exchanged pleasantries, and I could see James trying to figure out how I fit into this circle of successful professionals. Finally, Maria asked the question that would change everything. "Patricia, you should tell James about your company. She's one of our most successful members," she said to James. "Multi-million-dollar revenue in just 3 years." James's smile faltered. "Company?" "Johnson Sustainable Solutions," I said, watching his face carefully. "We specialize in eco-friendly home goods. International distribution, actually." The confusion in his eyes was almost comical. This didn't fit the narrative he'd constructed about his struggling sister. "I had no idea you were in business," he stammered. "There's a lot you don't know about me," I replied calmly. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, but I could see James's mind racing, trying to reconcile this new information with everything he thought he knew about my life. After he walked away, Jennifer looked at me with raised eyebrows. "That was your brother? The one from the intervention?" "That's him." "Oh, honey," she said, shaking her head. "He has no idea what's about to hit him." She was right. Within 48 hours, my phone was buzzing with calls and texts from family members. James had clearly gone home and told everyone about our encounter, and now they were all scrambling to understand what they'd missed. But I wasn't ready to engage yet. I had one more piece of my strategy to put in place. I'd been in talks with the local business journal about featuring emerging entrepreneurs in their year-end edition. When they offered to profile my company, I said yes. The interview took place at my new loft, which I'd furnished to reflect both my success and my values. Beautiful, sustainable furniture, artwork from local artists, and a home office that looked like it belonged to someone who knew what she was doing. The journalist, Kevin Martinez, was thorough in his research. He'd verified my revenue claims, interviewed several customers, and even spoken with my business mentor, Sarah Chen. The article he wrote was everything I could have hoped for. Patricia Johnson, the quiet millionaire next door. At 35, Patricia Johnson has built something remarkable, a sustainable home goods empire that generates millions in annual revenue while maintaining customer satisfaction ratings that make industry veterans jealous. But perhaps most remarkable is how she did it, quietly, methodically, and completely under the radar of the local business community. I've always been more interested in building something meaningful than building something flashy. Johnson explains from her downtown loft, which doubles as her company's creative headquarters. Success doesn't have to be loud to be real. Johnson's journey began 3 years ago when she identified a gap in the sustainable living market. Rather than seeking investors or fanfare, she bootstrapped her operation from her savings and grew organically through customer satisfaction and word-of-mouth marketing. Patricia represents everything we look for in successful entrepreneurs, says Sarah Chin, a veteran business mentor who has worked with Johnson for over a year. She's focused on value creation rather than self-promotion, and it shows in every aspect of her business. The numbers speak for themselves. $2.8 million in annual revenue, distribution to 4 countries, and a customer base that reads like a testimonial to sustainable business practices. Johnson employs 12 people remotely and is currently exploring international expansion opportunities. The goal was never to be the biggest, Johnson reflects. The goal was to build something that mattered, something that could sustain itself and create real value for customers. Everything else is just a bonus. What's next for this quiet success story? Johnson hints at several expansion projects in development, but true to form, she's keeping the details close to her chest. One thing is certain, Patricia Johnson has proven that sometimes the most powerful success stories are the ones that grow in plain sight, recognized only by those wise enough to look beyond the surface. The article was published on a Thursday morning in December. By Thursday afternoon, my phone was ringing nonstop. The first call was from my mother. "Patricia, honey, I just saw the most incredible article in the Business Journal. There's a woman with your name who—" She stopped mid-sentence. "Patricia, this is you, isn't it?" I let the silence stretch for a moment before answering. "Yes, Mom, it's me." "But how? When? We had no idea you were running a business, let alone a successful one?" "That's not what I meant," she said quickly, but we both knew it was exactly what she meant. "I've been building this company for 3 years, Mom. The whole time you thought I was failing, I was actually succeeding beyond anything I'd ever imagined." Another long silence. "Why didn't you tell us?" It was a fair question that deserved an honest answer. "Because I knew you'd try to control it. You'd want to offer advice, make connections, guide my decisions, and I needed this to be mine." "We could have helped," she said, her voice small. "I didn't need help. I needed you to believe in me without proof. I needed you to support me without understanding. I needed you to love me without conditions." My voice was steady, matter of fact. "But that's not what happened, is it?" The conversation ended awkwardly with promises to talk more soon that felt hollow to both of us. The calls kept coming. Dad, trying to sound proud but mostly confused about how he'd missed such a significant development. Aunt Susan, suddenly interested in my business expertise. Uncle Robert, wondering if I needed investment partners. But the call that mattered most came on Friday evening. "James, I don't understand," he said without preamble. 3 weeks ago, we were trying to help you get your life together. Now I find out you've been more successful than any of us?" "That's right. But why didn't you say anything? When we had that family meeting? When you disowned me?" "We didn't disown you. We were trying to motivate you." "James," I said quietly, "you told me I was embarrassing to the family. You said I needed to hit rock bottom to find my strength. You made me sit alone facing a room full of relatives while you all explained why I was a disappointment. But if we'd known—" "Known what? That I was successful? So your love and respect were conditional on my meeting your definition of achievement?" He was quiet for a long moment. "That's not. We just wanted what was best for you. No, you wanted what was comfortable for you. My success challenges everything you believed about our family dynamic. I was supposed to be the one who needed saving, the one who proved how successful everyone else was by comparison. That's not fair. Isn't it? James, I've been more successful than you for 2 years. My business generates more revenue than your law firm makes. But because I didn't perform success the way you expected, You assumed I was failing. The conversation went on for another 20 minutes, but I could tell he wasn't really hearing me. He was too busy trying to reconstruct his worldview to include this new information about his supposedly struggling sister. Over the next few weeks, the family attempted various forms of reconciliation. Dad suggested we all get together for Christmas to celebrate Patricia's success. Mom sent flowers to my office with a card about being so proud. Aunt Susan shared the Business Journal article on Facebook with glowing comments about her successful niece. But none of them apologized. None of them acknowledged what they'd put me through or took responsibility for their assumptions. They just pivoted, acting like my success erased their behavior. The final revelation came during a family dinner in January, one I agreed to attend after much consideration. We were all sitting around the same table where they'd delivered their ultimatum 6 months earlier, but the dynamic was completely different. "I still don't understand why you kept it secret," Dad said, cutting into his steak. "We could have helped you grow faster." "Could you?" I asked. "Or would you have tried to control every decision?" "That's not fair," Mom protested. "We've always supported your dreams." "Have you? What about the photography business in college that you called impractical? The graphic design work you said was just a hobby? Every time I showed interest in something creative or entrepreneurial, you steered me towards something more stable." "We were looking out for you," James said. "No, you were looking out for your image of me. You needed me to be the one who struggled, who needed guidance, who proved how successful your traditional paths were." The table fell silent. "The truth is," I continued, "this business succeeded because I kept it away from all of you. I made decisions based on data and customer needs, not family opinions. I took risks because I believed in my vision, not because it fit your definition of success." "So what happens now?" Dad asked finally. I looked around the table at these people who'd shaped my entire life, who'd loved me conditionally, who'd never really seen me for who I was. Now I build the life I actually want instead of the one you think I should have. I work with people who respect my judgment instead of people who question my competence. I invest my time in relationships that add value instead of ones that require me to prove my worth over and over. "Are you saying you don't want us in your life?" Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying I want you in my life on different terms. I want relationships based on mutual respect, not on your need to guide and my need to prove myself. I want conversations about who I am now, not lectures about who you think I should become." The dinner ended with awkward hugs and promises to work on things, but I knew the fundamental dynamic had shifted permanently. They could no longer see me as their project, their responsibility, their disappointment. I was simply Patricia, successful, independent, and no longer available for their rescue fantasies. 6 months later, my business had grown to $4.1 million in annual revenue. I'd been featured in 3 more publications, spoken at 2 business conferences, and received offers from investors wanting to help me scale internationally. But more importantly, I'd built a life that reflected my actual values and goals. I surrounded myself with people who appreciated my mind rather than questioned it, who celebrated my successes rather than minimized them, who treated me like an equal rather than a project. My family remained in my life, but on very different terms. We saw each other occasionally, usually for major holidays or family milestones. The conversations were polite, but surface level. They'd learned not to offer unsolicited advice about my business, and I'd learned not to expect emotional support from people who'd never been equipped to provide it. The most unexpected outcome was how many other people reached out after reading about my story. Dozens of entrepreneurs shared similar experiences of family rejection or conditional love. I started informally mentoring young business owners who were struggling with family pressure to pursue more traditional careers. "The hardest part isn't building the business," I told one mentee, a 28-year-old woman whose parents wanted her to become a doctor instead of following her passion for sustainable fashion. "The hardest part is believing you deserve success, even when the people closest to you don't believe in your vision." That became my mission, helping other entrepreneurs trust their own judgment even when their families couldn't see their potential. On a Tuesday evening in late spring, exactly 1 year after my family's intervention, I sat in my loft office reviewing the quarterly business reports. Revenue was up 47% from the previous year. Customer satisfaction had reached an all-time high. 3 major retailers wanted to carry my products, but the number that mattered most wasn't on any spreadsheet. For the first time in my adult life, I'd gone an entire year without seeking anyone's approval for my major decisions. I'd trusted my own judgment, honored my own values, and built something that was entirely mine. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Saw your company mentioned in Forbes. Congratulations." I smiled and set the phone aside without responding. There was nothing left to prove. The girl who'd sat in that chair facing a room full of disapproving relatives was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth wasn't determined by other people's opinions, whose success wasn't validated by external approval, whose life was finally completely her own. That was the sweetest revenge of all, not needing it anymore.